Hello, everyone. My name is Carson Dale. Thank you so much for joining me for my case study presentation. I was very lucky for this assignment because the person I got to interview was my very own sister, Alex. She has worked at many places, but she now finds herself in New York at Rolling Stones as a content writer and journalist. She had a recent ethical dilemma to go over that I thought was very valuable. Alex has encountered this ethical dilemma when she was asked to write a branded content piece that subtly promoted a product without clearly disclosing the sponsorship. The brand's team wanted the article to blend seamlessly with Rolling Stone's editorial content, but Alex felt this approach could mislead readers who expect transparency from the publication. Now, Alex was faced with the question: should she insist on clearly labeling the branded content as sponsored, potentially upsetting the client and the employer, or comply with the brand's request, risking the audience's trust and her professional integrity? When answering this, Alex said, "I took some time to evaluate the request against our editorial standards and the SPJ Code of Ethics. I consulted with another editor to gather this perspective." She finished it off by saying, "Ultimately, I propose reworking the article as clearly branded content with a disclaimer, instead of trying to pass it off as purely editorial. The advertiser accepted this revised approach after initial resistance, and I maintained trust with our audience." To dive even deeper into how her decision was made, I asked more. She said how intuition and authority were essential. Initially, she has a gut reaction. She prioritizes the audience and their trust above all else. But she also checked in with her editor since she had more experience than her. That reassured Alex that she was taking the right path in her own mind. Regardless of her decision, there are going to be positives and negatives. Though while looking at it, the positives seem to outweigh the negatives. I'll start with the positives. This is good for the audience because they can still trust and have a relationship with the publication. This helps the publication because they are still meeting the brand's goals without hurting themselves in the process. And ultimately, it was nice for Alex to keep her professional integrity intact and show her loyalty to the audience. The only true negative I can turn to was that the brand may have been upset with the compromise, but that feeling should be outweighed by the long term benefits of maintaining the publication's credibility. Out of all the justification models we covered this semester, the Potter box model works best for me and in this situation. The Potter box forces you to examine a situation from multiple perspectives with facts, values, principles, and loyalties, thus ensuring no critical element is overlooked. So, we will start with the facts. We know the branded content piece was sponsored by a client who wanted it to appear as a regular editorial content. We also know the audience expects Rolling Stone to be transparent about sponsorships. And lastly, the employer values client relationships and revenue, but also aims to maintain editorial integrity. Also, Alex feels like any lack of disclosure could mislead readers and damage trust in the publication. This goes hand in hand with the graph I wanted to include in the bottom right if you look right below me. I wanted to include this graph because it shows how Americans are rapidly losing trust in news media and how they can feel lost at times. So Alex is trying her best to create honest work people can look to when it feels impossible at this time. Next, in the Potter box model, is the value section, starting with transparency, where the audience has a right to know when the content is sponsored. Then you have trust, where Alex has made it a point that maintaining credibility with readers is essential for long term success. Third is profitability. The world runs on money, and the publication relies on sponsored content for revenue. The last one being the most important, Alex, that being professional integrity. Alex values honesty and ethical responsibility in her work regardless of what is being asked from her. She will keep values close in mind. And after that, we move on to apply ethical principles slide. The first one to apply would be Kant's categorical imperative. In the context of the sponsored content dilemma, applying the categorical imperative involves asking if every publication blurred the line between editorial and sponsored content, would that be morally acceptable for everyone? The universal moral law that emerges is that the publication should always disclose when content is sponsored. On top of that, Aristotle's golden mean can also help. The golden mean in this case suggests that a balanced solution. The publication can satisfy both the client and the audience by clearly labeling the sponsored content while ensuring that that is integrated in a way that is still engaging and relevant for the readers. And I also wanted to include utilitarianism here. This principle is good because it's rooted in the idea that morally right decision is the one that produces the greatest good for the greatest number. When applying this principle, decision makers focus on the outcomes of their actions and aim to maximize positive results while minimizing harm. For example, in media. In a news organization, a journalist might choose to publish an article that highlights a pressing public health issue because it will benefit society at large, even though there will be despite potential harm to the subject of the report. And then the last part of the Potter box model is the loyalties. We will start with the most important to Alex, that being the audience. The primary responsibility is to serve with honest and transparent content. She also knows that she must be loyal to her workplace if she wants a job. That means she also must consider the employer's business interests and maintain positive relationship with the clients. At the end of the day, she will always have her personal values to keep her sane and to move up her workday. My decision. Finally, we have made our way to my decision. And sorry to burst everyone's bubble and not to create any hype because my decision would pretty much be identical to my sister's, using all the things she talked about in the previous slides, making it to the logical conclusion. We should not be risking our reputation or the Rolling Stones' reputation simply to appease this specific client's wishes. Just like my sister, I would also put the audience first, and our decision respects the audience trust. It then takes into account Kant's categorical imperative. It can be really easiest for us just say yes and face the repercussions later, but we'd rather not do that, and we'd face the hard challenges now. And I skipped one slide, but I do have two takeaways. My takeaways being the importance of transparency. I went back to it. Um, I think it's important because this case highlights how crucial transparency is maintaining trust with the audience. And then my second takeaway is that balancing stakeholder trust. I want my classmates to learn that proposing compromises like transparent can be creative labeling, can often resolve conflicts without sacrificing ethical standards. And just to cap it off at the 7-minute mark, I just wanted to ask everyone, what do you think? I'm curious to hear everyone's thoughts. It is okay if you disagree with me, but if you do, I would love to know why. Thank you everyone for joining me for my presentation.